Hey everybody, it's Jason from the Texas Gun Vault, and once again it is Sunday and time for the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. I got a lot more people interested in this week's poll question because I know it has to do with something that might be a little bit divisive in the firearms community depending on your perspective and possibly your age and what you grew up with. I'm of course talking about revolvers. This week I released an amazing range report on this particular gun right here, which is on loan to the channel from a good friend, Jack. This is a Performance Center Smith & Wesson 327 chambered in .357 Magnum. This gun surprised me. It is so modern and tactical looking, made of the most modern materials. It really changed my perspective on wheel guns. I really want one of these revolvers. So it got me thinking about my perspective on revolvers, and I thought that I would ask you guys and see where you guys stand when it comes to revolvers and their practicality and if they have a place in the modern firearms community. So with that in mind, let's dive right into the question of the week. What are your thoughts on revolvers? Do you think they are still superior? Do you think they are outdated? Do you judge the revolver on a case-by-case basis? The reason I knew this was going to be very divisive is I know generationally some people think that the revolver is still the far superior firearm for a number of reasons. And I can tell you from a practical standpoint, I can see the pros and cons of semi-autos, I can see the pros and cons of revolvers. Some of it I think just has to be with what you're the most familiar with. And of course, you know, in your own personal self-defense situation, you have to make these decisions and you know what is best. So with that said, let's see the results of the poll. With 803 votes as of filming this, revolvers are and always have been superior to semi-autos. 2%. In general, I prefer revolvers, but like a few semi-autos. 2%. I like both. There are pros and cons to each. 31%. I prefer semi-autos, but appreciate a fine wheel gun. 60%. And revolvers should go the way of the dodo bird. They are irrelevant. 6%. Wow, I'm just going to say the results are very skewed in one direction, but I'm glad it's more towards the center. I actually thought the results when it came to revolvers should be done away with completely was actually going to be a lot higher. I was expecting very few people to vote for revolvers are still superior. I know there's a lot of channels out there that still like revolvers. I understand that mechanically they're a little bit more simplistic, and when I go over the pros and cons of the revolver, I can understand why some people, especially old school guys, would still think they are the best and better than semi-autos. One of the things that I always tell people about firearms and firearms technology is that it will continue to grow. It is not good to stagnate in the past. I've mentioned this before when I talked about great gun designers like John Moses Browning, probably the most influential gun designer of all time. I find it funny that he died in 1927, and although his designs are timeless and they are classics and many of his inventions and patents are still used today in firearms, people can't seem to get past the fact that so much has happened since 1927. So what I'm saying is that so much will transpire as time goes on. There was a time when the crossbow was the most efficient projectile weapon out there. Today, we look at them and go, well, they're nothing special. Well, the designs of John Moses Browning will be usurped in time because of technology. Well, potentially revolvers can be replaced by semi-autos. And although some people will say they are the best, they are the far superior gun, they'll say semi-autos have all these downsides. Well, time and technology marches on. And I think we've actually kind of reached critical mass where the generations that think the revolver is the superior weapon might be now more in the past. And the future generations of gun owners have said semi-autos are the way to go. But let's go through each one of these and I'll tell you my opinions. Revolvers are and always have been superior to semi-autos. and only 2%, as I mentioned, voted for this. And I know that there are the die-hard revolver guys, the guys that have just grown up on revolvers, look at semi-autos, and know their reputation from maybe generations in the past where they were unreliable. Of course, they were not as powerful. I mean, how can you compete with a 44 Magnum or a 357 Magnum, right? Well, now we got 357 SIG and 10mm auto. But there was a time when there was a case we said that 9mm was pretty anemic. 45, yeah, it had some stopping power, but it wasn't a 357. And of course, when it came to reliability, the revolver always has the semi-auto beat. In general, I prefer revolvers, but like a few semi-autos. The people that I know that are real revolver fans kind of fall into this category. In fact, some of the people that got me into guns and exposed me to different types of firearms were revolver fans. They appreciated modern semi-automatics, but when it came down to it, they loved revolvers. They loved their Colt Pythons. They loved their Colt Anacondas. They liked their old Smith & Wesson revolvers. They were superior in their mind. Yes, they agreed. Yes, the Glocks are better. They're great semi-autos. In some ways, maybe a little bit more reliable than 1911s, but you gotta go with the revolver. It's all you need. It is the pinnacle of firearms technology. To be honest with you, I'm kind of surprised that only 2% of the respondents voted for this. Then we have, I like both. There are pros and cons to each, 31%. I thought this was the category that was going to get the most votes. I know there's a lot of people out there that are very open-minded. They definitely like semi-autos, but they go, you know, revolvers definitely have a place. And there's a lot of cool revolvers out there. The Smith & Wesson Governor, the new Colt Python, you know, even this Smith & Wesson Model 327 Performance Center. It's really cool, and you can like both equally. But of course, they're not as tactical. And that's one of the things that I really liked about this particular revolver that I thought Smith & Wesson did really, really well with. They kind of modernized it with a scandium frame, titanium cylinder, rails. It just looks tactical, bringing this gun and this design into the 21st century. Then we have the one that overwhelmingly got the most votes, and actually is the one that I would have voted for if I would have voted in this poll, and that is I prefer semi-autos but appreciate a fine wheel gun. So when it comes to me and my collecting, you guys know I like tactical firearms because I worry that one day I won't be able to buy them as legislation changes. But revolvers aren't really the target of many anti-gunners, so I go, I can always wait for another day on those. So it takes a very special revolver for me to want to go out and buy it. So I have revolvers here from my collection, 3 of them in fact. And as you can see, I don't really collect revolvers unless they catch my eye. And here's one that did. This is a Colt Single Action Army in a 7.5-inch barrel configuration with the cold case hardening. This one's a 3rd generation and is kind of in the same configuration that the US Army would have bought them way back in the 1870s. So being somebody that loves military firearms, this is kind of the way that I wanted to go. I wanted a Colt Single Action Army. Then I also have a Charter Arms. I guess this is kind of a 1st generation undercover. This was my grandfather's gun. So I don't really shoot it. It's not a very accurate gun, but I keep it because it's been in the family since the 1960s. I think it's really cool, and the design of the Charter Arms has changed over time. It's interesting to see this one versus one of the new ones, but the only reason I keep this one is because it has nostalgic and family ties. And then we have my wife's revolver. She wanted a revolver for purse carry. This is her Smith & Wesson Airweight in 38 Special. Of course, it has the pink grips. No, they're not mine. I swear it's not mine, baby. But anyway, this is hers. It's in pink, as you can see. She likes this gun, a little bit more flippy than what she would want, but for purse carry, it works great. So we have this one because it's the kind of gun she wanted to have for certain occasions. And then, of course, the gun that I do want really bad, here as I've already shown you, is the Performance Center 327. Very different, modernized revolver. So these are guns that have piqued my interest for various reasons. Sometimes it's because they're tactical, sometimes it's because they're innovative. It can be for a number of different reasons. And so that's why I said I would have voted for this. I prefer semi-autos, but prefer a fine wheel gun. And I'll get a wheel gun if it piques my interest. I've owned other guns at times. I used to own a Colt Python, and I've owned a Smith & Wesson Governor. And I ended up selling both of those or trading them for other things, as my interest in revolvers would kind of wane. But as I said, sometimes I'll see one and I just have to have it. And then finally we have revolvers should go the way of the dodo bird. They are irrelevant, 6%. Well, you know, as I said, I know in the modern battlefield, the modern police work, and even in home defense, where semi-autos have become so reliable and so ubiquitous and they can carry more capacity, the revolver is, I think, irrelevant and obsolete. And I know some people are gonna thumbs down this video and say, I'm an idiot. That's okay. As I said, I still appreciate them. I still want them. I would still collect them. But when it comes to owning 1 or 2 guns, which I know many people that watch my channel just might be a casual gun owner, I don't think going to revolver is the way to go. It limits you in capacity. And when people bring up reliability, semi-autos have come so far. I know that when it comes to the reliability of a gun like this, mechanically it's so much more simple. You have double strike capability, it doesn't jam. So every time you pull that trigger, it's going to go bang until you run out of ammunition. But that's the problem. In this case, you only get 5 rounds. Then you got to open this thing up, dump them. If you don't have a moon clip or the gun's not set up for a moon clip, you got to load each one of those individually. Reloading sucks when you get used to a semi-auto. But that's the downside. So you have a reliability. I actually think that semi-autos are a little bit more accurate for me as well, but to me, it's the loading and unloading of revolvers that really does it for me and why I don't collect them more and don't think that they're viable in self-defense situations. I'll take a semi-auto any day of the week. So there you go. That is my thoughts on these revolvers, but let's see what you guys have to say and let's dive right in to this week's top-rated comments. So our top-rated comment of the week comes from XJRob85, who says, semi-autos are the standard for defensive pistols, but revolvers still have a place. I took a 4-day defensive pistol class with a revolver and was really surprised at how well it did compared to the semi-autos in the class. Revolvers shoot smoother and the sights track better than semi-autos because they don't have a reciprocating slide. They are so immune to feed-related stoppages. If you really need a powerful cartridge in a handgun, revolvers provide more options than semi-autos. Their main weakness are that they have limited capacity and are typically slower to reload. And if you do have a stoppage with a revolver, it is more serious and will probably require tools to fix. Well, he summed up everything I said in one great comment. I completely agree with this and I can see why it's the top rated comment of the week. Next up we have Dark Alliance Goon 999. And he says, the 357 Magnum is still the best handgun cartridge ever made. I know a lot of people agree with him as well. I personally think cartridges like the 357 SIG, which has pretty comparable ballistics, but in a semi-auto, do pretty well too. Then we have Theodore Bradley. I find the need for having and maintaining semi-autos far more relevant in the fast-paced world we find ourselves in. You don't want the world to pass you by. I know, as I said, some people will hold on to the past because it's what they know. They don't think anything can ever be better than a John Browning design. Well, things have come a long way since John Browning, and in no way demeaning his accomplishments and his genius. It's just that time marches on. The revolver was superior for decades, if not a century and a half. But now we live in a world of semi-autos, and you can either be left behind or go with the flow and keep up. Then we have Litzine Zoots, who says, different tools for different situations. I still have fond memories of my Smith & Wesson 357 that I used to carry during my mountain climbing days. I carry semi-autos nowadays, but that revolver was useful in cold winters wearing thick gloves in the deep snow woods. I still want to get a Chiappa Rhino at some point. I have never shot one, but I hear good things about it. And that comment too reminds me of another revolver that I would love to shoot and own. Talk about taking a revolver and rethinking it, the Chiappa Rhino, where the gun fires from the bottom cylinder instead of the top, having a lower bore axis. Plus, it looks really cool in tons of different options. And then our last comment of the week comes from Doug Swinford, who says, I've never had a jam with a revolver, but I've definitely had jams with semi-auto. They may be old technology, but pretty much you can rely on a revolver if your ammunition is in good shape. And I think he brings up the main point about revolvers. They are more reliable. But as our first commenter said today, if you do have a stoppage in a revolver and there's a mechanical problem, well, you're probably SOL, because unlike a semi-auto where you can clear the jam, in a revolver, it could be something much more serious. But the reliability factor, especially for someone that's only going to use the gun occasionally, and of course most defense shootings require 3 shots at a distance of 7 feet or less, the revolver would probably be just fine. And with the added advantage of reliability, it can be a big game changer. So there you go. So that is the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. I know it's kind of divisive. I'm sure I've made a couple of people upset. But remember, these are just my opinions, and these are just the opinions of other people that follow the channel. If you are a revolver lover and believe the revolver is the superior firearm of all time, you're still welcome here, and I respect your opinion. So as the saying goes, don't go away mad. Just go away. I'm just kidding. Everybody's welcome here, and I love hearing your opinions. All right, so that is the Texas Gun Vault poll question of the week. If you want to participate in next week's poll, please go to the community tab of my channel, and you will see it over there. I will also put a link in the description below. I really love hearing all of your thoughts and opinions. I'm not sure what next week's poll is going to be yet as of me filming this, but I'll try to find something that can be as divisive and controversial as I possibly can. It's what I know you guys like. All right, so let me know if you have any questions in the comments section below. And as always, thanks for watching.